You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This week we are talking about the American monster film Kong Skull Island, directed by Jordan Vogt-Roberts and released March 10th, 2017.
Wow.
Man, has it already been that long? 2017? I remember going and seeing this in theaters with a friend of mine and his son, and does not feel like it was that long ago, but I guess
time flies. You know, I had never seen this movie until we decided to cover it. And I was somewhat apprehensive because despite loving things about Godzilla, including the effects and the monsters, all the fun stuff, the story was not my favorite of all of the movies that we've covered. So I was a little nervous going into this one thinking, oh, I don't know. Is this going to be another Godzilla? And I'm not going to be super stoked about the story. However, I watched this about a week ago, and I didn't even know who was in it when I decided that I was going to watch it. So when the names start popping up, it's like, Tom Hiddleston, Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson. Is this Kong Skull Island or some, spin-off of the Avengers? I don't know, but we'll check it out. I was pleasantly surprised. It actually was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Good. I'm glad. Yeah. Because that's why, because I know, even though I don't, sure, when we recorded our episode over Godzilla, that, we stay pretty professional and, enjoy talking about what we're talking about. So I don't know how many people could, pick up on things. But, I know you well enough now at this point that I was like, yeah, she's not the biggest fan of this. But I keep pushing to do the rest of these, Monsterverse movies or whatever they're calling them. Because I knew you would like Kong Skull Island.
So much more than I thought I would. And I think the story, the cast, the effects, the cinematography, there was so much about this movie that I really enjoyed. And on the second watch, I enjoyed it even more. It was just a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. This is just a series of movies that I've never really been into. You would think I would be, given how much I love dinosaurs and big lizard creatures. However, I never really got into Godzilla, even though I had seen the earlier movies. I had never really gotten into it. And so when they decided to do this Monsterverse, I just wasn't sold on it. And I will say, I've seen the trailer for the upcoming Godzilla vs. Kong movie. I am all in on that, even more so now.
Yes. Oh yeah, we'll definitely have to jump on that one when it comes out. But that means we will have to cover Godzilla, King of the Monsters between now and then. And that's on the docket. We'll get there. We'll get there. It's better than the first. I like it better than the first Godzilla. Right.
Yeah, we'll cover it probably in the next 6 weeks. But for now, I did enjoy Kong Skull Island. It had a lot of things that I love. Yeah. There were some connections too. When I was watching it, that I was thinking, oh my god, this reminds me of Love and Monsters, only the monsters aren't deformed or hybrid versions of multiple creatures. They're just big versions of creatures. And I just loved the creature aspect of this movie so much.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up Love and Monsters because I had the same thought. Without spoiling too much for anybody who hasn't watched that, you need to watch it and go back and listen to our episode on it because it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I had the same thing, the scene where the giant water buffalo thing comes out and is looking at him, and I immediately thought, yes! It's in the eyes.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I did. And it just warmed my heart because that movie, Love and Monsters, was just one of those movies that hit me in the heart the whole time. So it just kind of endeared me a little bit more to the movie. I felt a little more connected to this one. I gave it a chance, even though I was nervous. I'm so glad I did. What you guys out in our audience don't know is Pake and I really don't talk about we make a practice of not talking about the movie before we record. So he has no idea if I like the movie or not, and I don't know what his real thoughts are on it until we start recording. Yep. So, having watched this like a week ago, we've not really talked about it at all. So, I'm really excited to kind of break this down, because there's a lot in this movie that is pretty awesome. So, I'm looking forward to breaking it all down.
All right. Well, let's jump into it and start with a little behind the scenes, fun facts, things like that.
I do this time too. It's kind of cool. It was filmed in like 3 places. The northern part of Vietnam, the Hawaiian island of Oahu, and the Gold Coast in Australia. And the cool thing for me, being a Jurassic Park nerd or Jurassic World nerd, is in Hawaii they filmed near some of the same filming locations that Jurassic World was filmed. So I was excited about that.
Nice. It's a good filming spot. That's a trip I'd like to take. I know that you can go over there and do like little like tours of like different filming locations from the Jurassic movies and see different spots. And there's still a lot of like props and fossils and stuff like that they have just left over there.
Mark actually shared a video with me. He posted it on my Facebook wall, and it's 2 people that he had met previously at, I think, a convention that do tours of different places, and they did a tour of that park. I think it's called Kualoa Ranch. It was incredible. I'm watching it, and the whole time I'm thinking, I have to go to this place. I've got to be there. I have to be there. It's just so cool.
It's my favorite flavor of Dorito, so it should be a lot of fun. No, kidding. Oh, no.
I count on you two, okay? I count on you two. So this film is a reboot of the King Kong franchise, but it's also the second film, as what we were talking about a minute ago. Legendary Pictures created this MonsterVerse. The first film was Godzilla, and Kong Skull Island is the second film in that series. The movie itself was set in 1973, and the IMAX poster that they used to promote the film was an homage to 1979's Apocalypse Now, which is not a surprise because I kind of got that feel from this movie from the beginning. Yeah.
Like the helicopter shots and stuff like that. Like,
so similar. It just gave me that vibe right from the start. I was into it. The budget for this film was $185 million. I consider it money well spent. And the box office draw was $566 million. The film itself is 118 minutes, and Pake, I know we're all dying to know what synopsis you're going to present to us on Kong Skull Island, so why don't you go for it?
All right, the synopsis I picked out here says, after the Vietnam War, a team of scientists explores an uncharted island in the Pacific, venturing into the domain of the mighty Kong, and must fight to escape primal Eden.
No. Yes, Eden it was. Except when it wasn't. There were moments. Oh, goodness. Goodness. So many moments. Where it seemed like a peaceful, tranquil place, and then it was like a war zone. Crazy with just explosions and bombs and everything else. It was crazy.
Yeah. So, let's dive in. Let's jump in. I'm ready to talk details about this movie. It's so much fun. So, where else do we start but then, exploring our wonderful, colorful cast of characters in Kong Skull Island. And I feel like there's a lot of places you could start, whether it's, the people we see first or the people that we see. But, I mean, when Tom Hiddleston is in a movie, you start with Tom Hiddleston.
Yes, you do. I love Tom Hiddleston. I saw him in some British TV dramas early on in his career, and so I've followed him for a while. So this film, I had no idea he was in it, and so when he popped up, it was just like, okay, I'm all in now. Thank you very much for putting a cast in this movie that I can get super excited about. So I was happy.
Yep. It is a really star-studded cast, and it blows me away every time. I'm like, oh yeah, they did get these people to do this. This is
cool. Pretty incredible. So what I really liked about James Conrad is he's kind of this tracker. He's an expert, a special forces guy. He was a captain. At first, I didn't think he seemed super responsible. I didn't think he was going to be the leader or leader type for this group. I thought he was just going to go and do his job. To me, he was kind of no nonsense. But he wasn't someone that you would expect to take charge of anything. Not really. Not at the start. Yeah. And I liked that he had the interaction. His interactions at the beginning with Randa, Bill Randa, who was played by John Goodman, they're having this little conversation about the island itself, and he just starts talking about all the things that can kill you, like an uncharted island. Let me list the ways you're gonna die. Rain, heat, mud, disease-carrying flies, and mosquitoes. Sure, you could load up the atabrine for the malaria, but what about the other bacteria? And we haven't even started on the things that want to eat you alive. Loved that right from the start. I'm like, okay, I can see who you are. Yeah. You're a very smart guy. You know what on the island is going to be against you, but do you really know? So I'm thinking from the beginning, this guy's going to be real surprised when he gets there and realizes that the things that want to eat him aren't the typical animal size.
Yeah. A bit bigger. And it's funny, random note, they show where they go and find him, where Brooks and Randa go and find Conrad is in Saigon. And when they first see him, he's kind of gotten into a fight with this thug there at the bar. Fun casting little thing. The thug that gets into a fight where he beats with a pool stick is played by stand-up comedian Dat Phan, who I am a huge fan of his stuff. I love him. He was the winner of Last Comic Standing, I think like the first one or something back in like 98 or whatever. And so he's really good. But his most current stand-up comedy album is called Born in Saigon, California. And so
I'm seeing the connection.
But I was like, fun connection.
Yeah,
like
that's a cool connection. Yeah, I'm not, as you know, the biggest fan of comedy. It's one of the things Pake and I differ on is he loves all comedy and I love just basically the dry humor. So that leaves out a lot of things. So that's a really cool connection though between the two. Yeah. I think that's great. I thought it was also interesting too that Conrad really, I don't think he was going to go. And then he's like, I want 5 times the amount and I want a bonus when we get back alive. And I'm thinking, well, if you get back. He seems really sane, though, and really calm. But, again, I didn't think he'd be like a person that would take charge of anything. I thought he was just going to do his job and finish and go home like everyone. You know, that's just what you think, right? I mean, you don't... I really felt like Randa was going to take charge. This was his baby. So...
And I think that's where Conrad was at first on his own mentality. He was like, okay, fine, whatever. You pay me a bunch of money. I don't care. I'll go there, do what I'm supposed to do. You lead this thing. But I think once he sees the like ineptitude of the whole operation and they did not know what they were getting into, I think then his like expertise and stuff kicks in and he's like, nobody's going to make it off this island alive unless I actually take over and get us out of here.
Yeah. I think that was very clear. I also liked his character arc throughout the film, like realizing that Kong was there, getting to the point he learned that Kong was protecting people. Like he was the protector. Yeah. Kong wasn't, the threat, even though I'm sure everyone in the beginning thought that he was when the helicopters were flying in, and then all of a sudden you see this big hand come out and start knocking the choppers around. I liked how he and Mason Weaver, who was the photographer, I liked how over time they really changed the way they were thinking about Kong and understanding his role as protector, especially of the villagers that were there. I liked that. I feel like that was part of the transition. The story of this movie to me was much stronger than what we got in Godzilla. So I liked the parts and pieces that went along with it. And one of my favorite parts was when he grabbed the sword and went through the leaf wings, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. Well, no, that's like, because I don't have a lot of notes on him specifically past what, like setting him up. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my next one. Other than I said, like, that scene, I was like, they set up a turret on a Triceratops skull, which I'm sure Daphne loved a lot. Even
I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty excited about that. Yeah. I actually had to pause it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh my god, is that what I think it is? Oh my god, yes. Yeah.
Even though that like ended up being completely pointless, but it looked cool for a second. But then it just got destroyed. And then you have like, the big flamethrower guy, which was great until he gets tail whipped into a skull and then blows up. And there's like at least this chain of events, like because he blows up, it ends up like hurting Slivko. And then so now Conrad has to get to the other side to help him, but now the toxic gas that he was wearing, those canisters that got knocked off of him when he got blown away, have now detonated. And so, he's got to get through this whole cloud of toxic gas to get to Slivko. Of course he does. And it just, it builds up the single coolest sequence of this entire movie. When anybody, to this day, when somebody brings up Kong Skull Island, it's literally the first thing that comes to my mind is Tom Hiddleston with a gas mask working his way through this cloud, just slicing these prehistoric birds into pieces, just looking amazing, even though like it was real impractical and totally doesn't make any sense that when he gets to the other side, he takes the mask off. I mean, it's so we can see beautiful Tom Hiddleston face. Yes, I get that. But like within the story, I was like, why don't you just leave it on? You got to go back through.
It defies logic why you would take it off with the poison gas around.
But that scene's so cool. He just starts working his way through, grabs the gas mask, and he's like, looks at Marlowe.
And he throws it. And in the slow motion, he grabs it. And then he just starts slicing through, and the blue blood is flying. And it takes me back, honestly, to Kill Bill when the bride is after, I think it's Orangey, and she's slicing up the crazy, she had that huge army of people, and she's just going and slicing everybody's limbs off and going crazy. That's what it reminded me of. I was all in. I loved it so much. It was just so exciting. It's
my favorite favorite thing of the whole movie. Because it is, like I said, when somebody mentions this movie, that's where my brain immediately goes is Tom Hiddleston slicing with this sword in the gas.
And it was slow motion. Just the way it was shot was great. That whole scene in what I call the boneyard, which is where Kong's family was killed, which is very sad. We don't really see that, but they talk about it. But that whole sequence of events in the boneyard was fantastic. The whole thing.
Yes.
Even Randa, when we get to him, we'll talk about his little trip in the boneyard. And what we saw from him. But I really did love that. And I also felt like, as time went on, Conrad really tried to diffuse the situations that would pop up with Packard, who was the military leader that accompanied them there. He had an attitude, and there's so much about his character when we get there. So much to talk about.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, Hiddleston's James Conrad is, a very good antithesis to General Packard. Or General, I don't know. General. I don't remember. I didn't write it down. I should have. But whatever rank he's at. But Packard, they're very, like I said, the antithesis where they are not the same at all, but they balance each other in a way that, like, when Packard is going off on, like, Crazy City, that Conrad's able to, like, pull him back in enough to be like, okay, but if you want to go on a suicide mission, that's fine, but let me at least get the civilians out of here before. Like, let's meet in the middle somewhere. But then also, like, Packard makes some good points that pulls Conrad along, where he's like, why in the hell would we even do this anyways? Like, because there's more weapons over there, and there's more, and it's just like, and he understands, at least at that viewpoint, is like, he is doing his job as the leader of these men, even if he takes things a little too far. A lot
He's
of the time.
very emotional, even though I think he thinks he's not emotional about it. I really think he's emotional about losing his men. But again, I feel like we have other characters we need to get to before we get to him. At least one other character, which was the badass Mason Weaver, a.k.a. the photographer.
Sure. A.k.a. Brie Larson.
Now, come on now. I know you want to say there's got to be a reference to your favorite movie in here somewhere. I'm waiting. What are you going to say?
I didn't. I don't have anything on that. I should have.
You should have. I was expecting it. I thought.
So like, well, they don't expect. Okay, I thought one off the top of my head because they go in there. It's like, oh, your name's Mason. Like the guy, like Steve reading the thing. It's like, oh, I thought Mason was the guy. I was like, I used to be called something else, but I don't go by that anymore.
There we go. All right, there. I feel like we can proceed now.
No one's called me that in a long time. No.
I really liked her. I liked that she's a photographer. I'm a photographer myself, and I love all the different aspects about it. And so I kind of could relate to that in her, where we meet her, she's looking at photos, she's up for an award, or the cover of Time. Mm. So we know she's legit. She's a legit photographer. And she wants to go. I still don't know why she wanted to go do this, but I'm glad she did. And I feel like, honestly, Kong bonded with her. That was the biggest thing in this movie. But it wasn't what you expect from a King Kong movie where it's the damsel in distress.
Yeah, no, she actually kind of helps him out in quite a few ways.
She does. As well. She does. And I did read that Brie Larson actually accepted the role in this movie because the character was an action girl and not the damsel in distress that we're used to seeing. Yeah. I appreciated that so much because she was strong. She was a strong character. She wasn't afraid to climb the rocks to light the flare. She wasn't afraid to throw the lighter to burn one of the skull crawler.
The skull crawlers. Mm-hmm. I came up with that name on my own. I've never said it out loud. I know, but I like it. I like Skullcrawler.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm like, yep, that sounds perfect. Let's stick with it. I know you made it up to scare people, but you know what? It was great. And that's another great character that we get to. I feel like the characters in this,
there's a lot of
there were good ones, and they were complex and interesting, and even though we didn't get a lot of backstory, we still got enough to, kind of hone in and get behind them. So I think, that's a win-win. It's hard with movies because if they don't give you a lot of backstory, you can't get too attached, but I found myself getting attached to them. As time went on, we learned a lot.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier when you talked about Weaver, and you're like, I don't know why she went exactly. The best way I put it together, because she mentioned she's like an anti-war photographer. And so she's used to getting in the middle of political and military situations and trying to like expose what's going on. And so that, I think, because she mentions, when she's calling her friend or whatever to get, have him get her on the list to be part of this expedition. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what do you have, why are you interested in that? And she says, it was like, because like 3 or 4 different like official political and military people I've talked to have given me the same answer almost verbatim. And that means it's scripted and there's something else going on below the surface and I need to find out what it is.
She does I do get the feeling that she likes action and adventure too. But I think you're right. I think she's kind of looking at it as an investigative photojournalist. Yes. To go and discover, like, what are they hiding? What's going on? And I can get behind that, too.
Yeah, it's like, if our military's up to something, I want to know what it is.
I can get behind that, too. I really liked her. I liked, like I said, the bonding with Kong, and I like that she wasn't afraid. There wasn't a lot about her character. I mean, as far as notes, it was really hard to, like, take a lot of notes, because I feel like there were just certain things that happened, and some of the stuff that I connected with her character also connected with Kong. So I kind of saved those notes for later when we talk about Kong.
Same here. Yeah. But she has a good connection with Kong. And I think Kong sees that in her when they first encounter like face to face or whatever, is she's sitting there trying to get this helicopter off of this like giant buffalo thing. Like she's not going to do anything herself. But like he looks at her and she's scared for a second, like, oh no, is he going to think that like I did this or what's that? But there's almost like this little like knowing look between them. And then he's like, okay, you're cool with me. Yeah. He just turns around and heads off. And it starts this kind of, I don't know if I'd call it a friendship, but there's a connection. There's
definitely a connection between the two of them.
I guess it's...
I liked it.
Friendship enough to where he saves her life at the end. So there is that.
The fact that he had her in his hand when he's ripping out the organs of the final Skullcrawler.
The big one.
The big one, who actually has a name, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. how he managed to not crush her through that whole thing. Good on him.
Because he used that hand.
Yeah.
I don't understand, but okay.
Because it wasn't so much him grabbing like the tongue. It was like wrapped around his arm anyway, like a cable.
Yeah.
And so he just pulled it from there.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Kind of gross, but
that was
good.
That was sick. I loved it. But yeah, so both of these characters, Conrad and Weaver, I would love to see more of them like in this MonsterVerse, but I don't know how it fits because this movie is like a prequel to Godzilla because this is in the 70s.
Yes.
And so next time we see Kong is going to be modern day with Godzilla versus Kong. And
yeah.
So you can't really have these characters come back without like aging them up, and that's hard to do. And
yeah.
So I wish we could see more of them, but they did build them into the bigger story a little bit. If you stuck around, did you see the post-credits?
Of course I did.
Scene?
I learned from watching Marvel movies that some films that are part of a series will have a post-credit scene. So of course I stuck around till the end.
Yes. So for those who maybe missed it or didn't see it, you should go back and watch it. It's great. But I'll kind of, summarize it up here a little bit is you see Conrad and Weaver and they think they're being questioned by the FBI or something else where they're like, fine, well, whatever you want, we what island? We don't know what you're talking about. Of course, we'll deny whatever. But Weaver's a little stronger that she's like, no, I'm not going to deny. I'll tell the Russians. Like she's just very like cheeky about it. But then it turns out that they are in like a Monarch facility. Mm-hmm. Because of this discovery, Monarch is going to be fine. Like they're going to keep on going because we see Monarch in Godzilla. So we know that they keep on trucking through. But they meet up with Brooks and Son from Monarch that they were on this island with. And that's where Brooks, Corey Hawkins, by the way, love him.
Yes.
I wish he'd come back to The Walking Dead. But
me too. There's still hope. There's still hope.
Yes. But he kind of lays out to him as like, okay, so now that you've seen it, we can let you in a little bit more of like what Monarch's been working on. It's like the reason that we knew like there had to be something else here. So because there are other things that we have proof of and images of and stuff. And so he goes to show them these different images that are either, ancient people have like written like, cave paintings and stuff of that mark these things, or it's like some kind of like actual like documented footage and photos and stuff of different things. And so the ones that the way they go through, we get Rodan, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and of course Godzilla himself, herself, whatever. I don't know. But we get Godzilla, and it ends with the sound effect of Godzilla's roar over that as it fades out. And which is that because I remember seeing this in theaters when it first came out, and it was kind of just hinted at, like talked about. I was like, is this going to connect to Godzilla? Are they going to do? Because it wasn't really confirmed that they were doing this MonsterVerse thing yet. And so seeing this post-credit scene in the theater and having that, goosebumps. Like me and my friend who went and saw it because we were like big fans of this kind of stuff. So it was like, that was that light bulb moment. It was like, oh, they're connecting them and there's going to be more. And this is going to be cool.
Yeah. You can see where it would be. It's exciting. I'm interested to see how they mix them together. And like we said, we have Godzilla King of the Monsters to do before we can get to Godzilla versus Kong. So,
yes,
which I have not seen Godzilla King of the Monsters. So I've really been mostly out of the MonsterVerse. Yeah, but I'm diving in little by little. One movie at a time. I think
we might have a friend of ours jump on and cover that movie with us, I think, who is a huge Godzilla fan, so we'll be able to talk about certain things about that movie that I'm not going to say because you haven't seen it. So
yeah, the lore. Yeah, our guest has a lot of information on the lore and kaiju as a whole, plus the Toho connection. There's so much. So that is when we cover that movie, we will have a special guest who is going to deliver information that neither one of us know. So I'm excited about that.
Because I'll be honest, I don't know much about Godzilla stuff outside of the current MonsterVerse. I mean, I've seen some of the older stuff, but I've never like jumped in and dived in really deep into a lot of that stuff. It's very surface for me. So it'll be cool to hear.
I've seen all the old ones, like the older ones, but they weren't my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, again, it makes no sense because Godzilla is really similar to a dinosaur. So would make sense that I would love, Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the monster, but we'll see. I'm excited to watch and talk about Godzilla King of the Monsters, because I think that it'll be interesting to see what I think, to watch it and then see what my reaction is to it, because I really did love this one. So
good. I'm glad. I knew you would. I'm glad. All right. So jumping back into characters, we hinted at him a little bit. Let's talk about Packard.
Oh my goodness.
Played by Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson.
Oh my goodness. So before we even talk about him, I have to say that there were 2 times in this movie, at least, where I heard throwback quotes. Hold on to your butts and bitch, please. Those are 2 things that he said in different movies. Hold on to your butts was something he said in Jurassic Park. And bitch, please is from Pulp Fiction. And I loved the throwbacks. I was excited about it.
And then he had a couple, like once or twice, where he was going to drop his classic Samuel L. Jackson, and he was always cut off right there by something.
Yes.
So they wanted a PG-13 rating, so of course you can only drop the F-bomb once in a PG-13 movie. And I love that going on a little tangent, but while I'm talking about that, I love that they gave the one F-bomb in the movie to an outtake that was not scripted and had nothing to do with the movie, but they decided to put it anyway because it's so funny. And that is when John C. Reilly is talking about the ants in the trees. That was not scripted. That was a complete outtake. It was during a moment when they were filming where they just wanted like the spirits to be like brought up. And John C. Reilly is a hilarious guy.
Yeah.
And so he was like, just start riffing like in character about some stuff. And he's like, and come up with some like crazy creatures that live on this island. Like none of this is going to make it in the movie. But I just want to see where your head's at. But it was so good. They had to put it in. And he was like, I could think of all these ridiculous creatures, but what's the stupidest thing I could think of is ants that live in the trees. And so it was all just like, he just came up with it off the top of his head and then so that's that line where he was just like, but it's the ants. And he was like, they're up in the trees. And then you hear this like bird tweeting something like, I think that's a bird. It's not as a fucking ant.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So perfect. So perfect. I had no idea, but now I love it. I can't wait to get to talk about Hank Marlowe, because there's so much about him too. He was so great in this movie. But getting back to Packard and his Sky Devils, Cole, Mills, Slivko, and I believe it's Reles. Those were the remaining Sky Devils after the big crash. I mean, there were others, but those were the 4 that seemed to be the closest.
Yeah. And then Chapman, who was off on his own.
Poor Chapman. Yeah. One thing that stood out to me about Packard is he really did seem to care so much about his team. They all thought they were going home, but he's the one who felt like it didn't seem like he wanted to go home. It's like he's looking in this box and he's like, well, all this, what was it for? I think was the quote that he said. Yeah,
he's kind of one of those guys where like being a soldier and being this like that, like that's who he is at heart. And that's all, like he's built his identity on that. So he was like, so if I retire from this and I go home and try to live a normal civilian life, then who am I?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not going to, speak to that too much because I don't have my own personal, connection to that. But from what I understand, I mean, that's a big part of like kind of PTSD and like trauma in a lot of military veterans is trying to cope with just normal civilian life after you've been through all of that and not knowing really who you are outside of it. I can totally see that being something that Packard was scared of.
Yeah.
And so why not take on this last, mission to just add a little bit more? And makes me think that like his soldiers and his men are maybe the biggest like victims of this movie. Now, luckily there's a good handful of them that do survive and make it out in the end, but the ones that don't, I mean, they were like Chapman. That is such a sad story because he was so ready. I mean, he was talking about how he's like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to spend time with my son. And I already have this like business ideas, plans with my, like this friend. And like, I have life ready for me to get home to. And then for that to never happen because of this one last mission,
And so many of them died. Like so many of the folks on the helicopters died throughout the film. I mean, only 3 survived by the end because they lost the last one, Cole, who was very close with Mills, and it was so sad to watch Mills' reaction to that.
Yeah.
Especially because Cole sacrificed himself, and it was for nothing, kind of. Because he was trying to kill that Skullcrawler, but the tail just whipped him into the mountain, basically, and he blew up. And
that scene is interesting to talk about because, like I say, it's one of my favorite parts of the movie, but it's super depressing and sad. Like, it's weird. Like, it's such a cool, like, visual and such a crazy thing. But, like, when you really break it down, it's like, why do I love that so much? Because it's really sad and really messed up that this guy was ready to, like, sacrifice himself for his team and be like, you guys are going to make it home. This is for, this is my time. And then for it to be for nothing and just, it's rough.
It was really rough to watch. Knowing Packard, you couldn't look at him and say he didn't care about his men, because he definitely did. Like, he wanted vengeance.
Yeah, because that's his whole vendetta.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has this vendetta against Kong that he's like, nope, he took out all those helicopters and killed all these men, and so I'm not going to stop until he's dead, which then, of course, becomes the downfall of so many more of his men. So he kind of rides this line of, like, he's doing it for the right reason, but it ends up being the absolute worst decision he can make. And it probably would have been better. He would have been able to, like, avenge the, like, lives and memories of his men that did die by letting it go and protecting and, helping more of his men survive after the fact.
Yeah, agreed. I did like that that when they were flying, trying to get above the clouds to get to the island, and the storm was coming, and they were when they were right in the middle of the storm, he's telling the story of Icarus flying too close to the sun.
Yeah.
And I love that story, so it's like, okay. I liked how he used that to explain that happened to him, but the helicopters were made of strong steel and nothing was going to get through them. So I liked how he made that connection. It was cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now Packard as a character, I do say, I will give him, he was cold and he was fearless.
Yes.
I mean, when helicopters are raining down around him and there's fire all around, he's just standing there staring into the eyes of Kong.
Yes.
Like, you're mine. He doesn't care that he's way taller than he is, but he's just looking at him like, you're my target. Okay. We made that, agreement. And all the way to the end, to where when Kong is laying there next to him and he's, got these charges and bombs set up around him and he's ready to just set it off. He's like, okay, here's our time, looking him in the eyes. I love that he just kind of goes out in the way that Kong just smashes him like, no, we're not doing this. You're done. I'm done with you.
So I feel like that was one of a list of great moments of cinematography in this film. There were just little glimpses and shots of things, the way that it was shot. It wasn't just what it was the way they shot it. And I'll get to that in a bit. There were just things about it, and that was one of the pieces, like one of the things. There were just these moments that fire's burning all around, and there's Kong looking straight at Packard, and it's just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
It's a
There's
moment.
a few of those, which I don't know what you have in your notes and stuff, but yeah, I mean, a few of those, like right off the top of my head too, that I think are the coolest are, the sun rise or set or whatever. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think like timing. It hasn't been rise because they had the whole day after. Of like, coming up behind Kong as he's standing there and these like helicopters, all these choppers flying towards him is just the visual.
Amazing.
Incredible.
Amazing.
And then some of even like the action stuff, like when Kong has the propeller on the chain and he goes and like slings it and it just goes slow-mo as it's just like sliding in front of him. There's some incredible shots in this movie.
You know what that reminded me of? And you should know it because you've played it. Kratos in God of War.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Totally.
Those, like, blades of chaos.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I loved that. Mm-hmm. I went there right away. It's like, okay, yes, reminds me of Kratos. Super amazing. Loved it. I also liked when Randa was eaten by the Skullcrawler and his camera kept going off and you kept getting these flashes. I loved that. Like, it was just like,
yeah. Shh. How many bulbs does that thing have?
I don't know, but enough.
Because it went on for a while.
I'm not sure what he was doing. Taking, photos of the interior. Was he planning to remodel the inside of the Skullcrawler? Because
well, that's the reason because there's something stuck in it. and it kept going off on its own. That was the
Okay.
thing.
All right. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Because I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, that's what happened, because he turns it around and it flashes on his face, and then somehow I didn't get that quite connection. He realizes the Skullcrawler is behind him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what. So as he gets eaten, the thing's just flashing because it's stuck. It's like something's stuck on there, and it just keeps going off. Because I have in my notes, I said, they run into the Skullcrawler. That this Skullcrawler kindly, by throwing up, lets them know that their mission to save Chapman was useless. And then
Yes.
Yes, but then Randa also goes down in a flash, or several of them, really.
Oh, goodness. Pake's bringing the puns. Here we go.
But yeah, but they have to go into this, like, you called it the boneyard, you said.
Yeah.
Even against Marlowe's recommendation that they definitely don't do that. And I love his just like, yeah, as they're like, no, we're going through. He's like, well, I've only been here 28 years, so what do I know?
I know. Oh my God. Another great quote from Marlowe. I mean, every quote could come from him, not Marlowe.
Yeah,
Is
a
it
lot
Marlowe?
of mine do.
Yeah, it's Marlowe, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's Marlowe.
another great quote from Marlowe. Just incredible. The other thing, too, that sticks out to me is Neves, one of the Landsat scientists, who gets eaten by the creatures that pull him up, and you see him in front of the sun.
Yeah.
There he is, and he's ripped apart. I mean, hello, that was gross. The leaf wings. Yeah, the leaf wings take him up, and there he is, ripped to pieces.
Yeah, I have on my notes for him. I was like, well, he is like, I have it, Victor Neves. And I was like, Victor just gets nabbed off of the plote, as Slivko has called it. And he just gets nabbed by the ugly ass birds, as Packard has called them.
Yes.
And they just take him away, and that's that. All right, moving on.
Moving on to the next thing, he's gone. Yeah, the other guy, I can't remember his name, but the other scientist guy, he didn't make it either.
Steve. That's all. He was just known as Landsat Steve in the credits.
Landsat Steve. All right. Well, he didn't make it either. He sided
Played
with the wrong
by-
person.
I don't have the actor's name in my notes. I can look it up, but I've seen him. He's one of those like comedic actors who plays in everything. He's most likely, if anybody's watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, he is Captain Holt's husband.
I knew he looked familiar.
Yeah. And he's also the like one of the head demon, like the head demon in The Good Place.
Okay. That makes sense. That's where I saw him, was Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I kept thinking, I've seen you. I can't remember where. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So we know that Packard is so focused on killing Kong. And in the end, it wasn't Kong that killed him. It was Ramarek, or Ramarek, or however you want to pronounce it. But that is the big baddie that lives down under that Marlowe is always talking about.
Yeah.
And that's his name. Yeah, it's Ramarek.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, too. I'm like, what? Yeah, he has a name. Wasn't said in the movie, but I did the research and that it came up.
Of course.
When you go digging
Awesome.
sometimes, you can get in there.
Now, we mentioned Bill Randa.
Oh,
I think that's the next one to go into, unless you have more on Packard.
No, I'm good on Packard.
Cool. As we did talk about his demise, but then before that, leading up, we see him right at the beginning of the movie, not the very beginning, but as we kind of move after that, he's Monarch. I don't know if he's like the leader of Monarch at the time, and I was like, Monarch is back, except not actually back, because this takes place before Godzilla. But you know what I mean. They're back to us and watching these movies.
Yes.
And at this point in the 70s, they're facing being shut down because they haven't really accomplished much of anything with their, finding all these monsters and giant things. Even though they have the stuff, but they can't really prove any of it. This is kind of the last ditch effort for them to really make something of it. But then you pick up on pretty quickly that and Randa knows more than he's letting on, even to Brooks. I'm not sure how he knows about this island as much as he does.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that he knows right off the bat, he's like, he's going to need military assistance and all these weapons and a tracker. And it's like, he has good reasons to explain those away. He's like, oh, we just need somebody who can fly us through the storm. And a tracker is just in case somebody gets lost. We know, or we don't have maps of this place, so we need somebody who can figure out the the geography of it on their own. And he has good answers for things, but you find out, he knows there's more of a reason to be here.
Absolutely.
Which he wouldn't fit in with Monarch nowadays as we see them in Godzilla and stuff, because his idea is these monsters are going to try to take back over the world, so we need to stop them.
Yes.
And the Monarch that we know from Godzilla is more like, no, we need to study them and understand them and coexist with them. So it's very different there. They've changed in 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
50
Yeah.
years. Man, time is crazy that way.
It really is.
Time goes on.
I like, too, though, the way that he explained things, like myth and science, and the island is like where those things meet, and wanting to study the ecosystem, and goes to the senator to use his last favor. He's like, the senator just tells him, okay, this is it. You're not getting any more, and we're going to shut you down if you don't get anything out of this. Well, obviously, they don't shut them down, at least at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because Monarch's still going in Godzilla, which takes place in like the 90s and then like 2010s.
Yeah.
The kind of times they jump in there.
It's interesting, too, though, when Packard kind of confronts Randa after all the helicopters have been knocked down. He kind of goes to Randa and basically is like, I want to know what I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then Randa's like, monsters exist. And then Packard says, no shit.
No shit.
Like, no big deal. Yeah, I just saw them. I'm not an idiot. I've seen it. I saw a big hand come out of nowhere and start crashing helicopters together. So I liked that Packard wasn't afraid to confront Randa about that, but Randa was also quick to diffuse the situation as well.
Yeah.
Dropping those bombs, though, I don't think that was a good idea. I mean, he knew what he was doing. I feel like Randa knew that by dropping the bombs, it was going to wake Kong up or wake something up. I'm not sure he knew what it was exactly, but I know that he wanted to wake up whatever it was. I'm not even sure if he knew there was more than one thing there, because there was a lot of different creatures there.
Yeah.
We learned over time.
Yeah, those seismic charges. That's one way to piss Kong off. Yeah.
Yes.
Blow up bombs on his island.
He is not a fan.
You'll get a palm tree through your helicopter. Don't.
Yeah, he is a protector, and he does not want any disruption like that. That pisses him off. Poor helicopters, poor crew. Yeah. A lot of people died there.
Rough.
Very rough.
So, yeah. I think we're going through the notes, unless you got more to say on Bill Randa.
Can we talk about Marlowe?
Jump to Hank Marlowe.
Thank goodness. I'm so glad, because I just, yeah, John C. Reilly is so good.
He is. This may be my favorite character of the movie. And again, it's like you mentioned, because my love for comedy, and John C. Reilly is just hilarious. And I love him so much. So
many things he said. I mean, I could have had so many quotes from him. And the thing is, I didn't even realize that we were meeting him at the very beginning of the movie.
Yes.
I had no idea. And then it finally clicked for me, and it, the light bulb went on, and it's like, oh my God, the fight at the beginning in this. Yeah, it blew my mind a little bit, but I'm really glad that we get him in this film, because I just think he's great. And his story was the happy ending story that we get. Because you don't get a happy ending in these movies. Not really. I mean, if you make it out alive, and I guess that's the happy ending, but I mean, a real happy ending, I feel like we got with Marlowe.
Where, he gets to get off the island after 28 years, and then he's reunited with his wife, and then his now adult son that he never met. But even more important than those people is he gets reunited with a hot dog and a beer and the Cubs. So that's...
I know. I know. It's like, it makes you tear up when you see it. You're just like, oh, Marlowe, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
You won't be in any more movies, I'm sure, but goodness, I enjoyed you in this one.
Yes.
It was so good to see him. And
great.
I liked how they did introduce us to him and Akari, who was the other pilot. We meet at the very beginning, and they're fighting because, it's a war.
Yeah,
they're on two different sides,
kicking it off,
and they're fighting each other.
1944. This is like in the heat of, World War II, and Yeah, that's what I mean. Just fighter pilots. He's an American pilot, and Gunpei Akari is the Japanese pilot, and they're like in a dogfight with each other, and somehow it takes place over this island, and they both take each other out and crash. And as the planes crash, and then they immediately pick up the fighting again, and they kind of leave it there. Which, man, that scene though when they're fighting, and Marlowe catches the sword, and then Gunpei just like starts sliding it through his hands. It's like, I don't do well.
My hand hurt. Oh, that fun. Oh, that was just painful.
So I love that, like, you cut there and you get that tension, but then you find out throughout the movie that actually after that, for some reason, like Marlowe and Gunpei decide to actually become friends and survive together.
Yes.
And they work together. They've been building this boat out of broken pieces of both of their planes. And they're trying to survive and strive together until, unfortunately, a skullcrawler ends up getting Gunpei. And he kind of has this, but then that's where he gets the sword. Is that his sword that we see that slice with. And so he decides to take that with him to honor him and take part of him home with him. Which Gunpei was played by Miyavi, who is a Japanese guitarist and musician who's real good. Music is pretty good. And I have a good friend of mine who goes and sees him every time he tours through the area. And she's always talking up so much about it. So like I thought of her, but I was like, that's awesome. So yeah, so his music is good. I think you've heard a little bit. I think I played some of it for you before we started recording.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. Wonderful. That is wonderful.
So that is the artist, the musician Miyavi, and that is who played Gunpei Akari.
Awesome. Well, that is great. I like that little tangent that you just went on.
Yeah.
I like it. Music in movies, the way that music connects to a movie is always really important because I think music can make or break the mood that the scene sets.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important. I loved that they formed this friendship and that when Marlowe was getting ready to leave the island, first of all, he's trying to shave and says, I don't know if I'll like what's underneath all this hair.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a little self-conscious about it, I think. And I love that he goes and gets the sword, but he talks about, we talked about not leaving each other behind when we left. And I liked that. Yeah. I liked the way that he introduced the group to the tribe that he was living with, that they never really spoke, but they had this understanding. It was like this unspoken comradeship together. And I liked that a lot. And I loved when they went into this, I think it was the ship, and that all the rocks were painted in this really cool way that showed all the different types of creatures that were on the island that were after the folks that were living there.
Well, it's because of those paintings that, because you mentioned, Conrad and Weaver kind of figure out that Kong is the protector. And that's how, is through these. Marlowe's able to tell them that story and show them, like, oh no, like the people, it was an Iwi? The people that live here on this island was like, yeah, like they were being hunted and killed by these skull crawlers and all kinds of different things. And then the like giant apes, like, Kong, whatever that species you would call them, ended up kind of stepping up and becoming protectors of the people. And then the skull crawlers, especially the big one, I already forgot what you said his name was.
Romeric. Yeah.
Ends up wiping out all of Kong's species and family, except Kong is the last one. And Kong is actually like probably one of the youngest. Kong is small and young still.
Yeah.
And we get that. So that's what I love. I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but I get excited because when Marlowe kind of brings that up, that he's still actually really small and has a lot to grow. And this was in the 70s. So the next time we see Kong will be Godzilla versus Kong, which is modern day. Ooh, he's going to be a lot bigger.
It's going to be a lot bigger. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's going to be great. I love, too, that Marlowe said the wall is to keep others out, not Kong. That Kong's the protector. And he basically says, and this is one of his quotes, Kong's a pretty good king, keeps to himself mostly. This is his home, we're just guests. But you don't go into someone's house and start dropping bombs unless you're picking a fight.
Yeah.
Absolutely, from Marlowe's mouth, how it should be. You do not go dropping bombs.
Yep.
You just don't.
So that kind of wipes out, like, he's not the bad guy that, like, that Packard has set this vendetta against. Like, yeah, of course, Kong got angry and destroyed and killed a bunch of your men because, like, you showed up in his house and started dropping bombs and killing creatures that were under his watch.
Yes. Not a fan. Dislike.
Mm-hmm.
Not good.
Came in and got on his bad list immediately. Of course you're going to have some trouble.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's exactly what would happen if anyone came in and, started destroying or killing people in your own land. I mean, of course you're going to fight back. And that's what he did. He was protecting his people. He didn't know what they were there to do. I mean, I don't think Randa was there to do great things. I think he was there to figure out how to stop them. I don't think he was there to study them. Although I think that Lynn and Brooks, I think they were more focused on the study piece of it. I think they were more interested in that piece.
It may sound kind of cold, but it's a fictional character, so I can say this and it's okay. The fact that Randa died on that island is probably a great thing, because then that leaves like Brooks and stuff in charge of Monarch now. And that's where I think we get that turn of they're going to be more wanting to coexist and protect and understand these kind of creatures and not take them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I also, one of the last things he did before he got to go home, where he actually says in Japanese, death before dishonor. And he says it in Japanese. And that was just, to me, very telling of his friendship that he had with Gunpei.
Yeah.
I mean, they really were bonded. And, he took the sword with him when he went. And yeah, that was serious.
Yeah. Marlowe's just great. Like I said, just probably a favorite character. For the funny stuff, too. I think one of my favorite little scenes is whenever he's being filled in on the outside world he's missed out on the past, 30 years. And just his questions and stuff. That, like a Cold War, like, they take summers off. It's great. Have the Cubs won a World Series yet?
Did we win the war? Which one?
Yeah, that explains a lot. That checks. The Cubs, and then Slivko, one of those. L and Slivko. I go in some order. Slivko. Yeah, I kind of had to say, the Cubs. Yeah, right. And he was like, well, I'm from Chicago. I was like, where are you from? Detroit. Oh, like the Tigers are going to do anything. And they just have this little baseball moment.
I love it.
And I love that. And then, well, who's going to win in a fight, a tiger or a cub? And then Marlowe's just quick. He's like, well, a tiger, obviously. He's like, I'm not going to play that game. It's like, just think it through. It's like a grown-ass tiger is going to kill a baby cub.
But wait till the cub grows up.
Yeah. It's just those little conversations. We put a man on the moon? Did they just leave him there? What's he eating?
Amazing. So amazing. Really, he was such a high point in this movie. He was the comic relief that you needed amongst all the blood and guts. I think, for sure.
Yeah, and then, of course, unfortunately, we never see the ants that he's talking about in that scene that I talked about. That improvised line. And apparently the director wanted to end up putting in a scene and actually make the ants and show them, but they just didn't have time and budget to do it. But it was all based of just John C. Reilly's improvisation that I love it.
It's what lives in his head.
You think that's a bird? It's a fucking ant. That's so great.
Oh my gosh. Loved it. Loved it. Oh,
so
goodness.
Let's see if I have any other notes about I'll run through mine real quick on the other characters and just see kind of what I have, and then I'll see what you have as well.
All right.
We just kind of get through the characters. So I'll say, I love that Brooks, when they're talking to Senator Willis to get the rights to go out there on this expedition, and he's like, always lead with competing with the Russians because I don't get anything accomplished. He's like, well, the Russians are going to be flying over that area pretty soon, and then they're going to know everything we know, so we should know it first. And he's just like, I hate that makes sense. It's a smart way to go, especially in the 70s.
Yes.
I thought that all of the soldiers using Dear Billy with each other when they're under stress and in those situations as kind of a reference to Chapman's letters to his son was really endearing and beautiful.
So endearing. Mm-hmm. So endearing. I love that.
Even when they're doing it as a joke, Yeah. But it was but that's the bond that these, it's a, band of brothers kind of thing, that there's these bonds that they have. Yeah. And then even that line when after they find, after Chapman's been found, confirmed dead, and Mills has that kind of, well, Dear Billy, your dad was the realest of them, or something like that. It's just like, oh man.
It hits you in the heart. It made you even more endeared to the three that did make it out.
Yeah.
I was so endeared to them in different ways. I feel like we got to see Slivko a lot more because he was trapped with the others. But I also think that them bonding with him by spending that time with him near the end when they're trying to talk him into not blowing the charges to kill Kong, I feel like that's how that it helped because they had that relationship with him. I feel like that helped him realize that what he was doing was wrong. Like he couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, he was with the group when they found Marlowe and got to hear the whole story of how Kong is the protector of this island. He knows these things, and so...
Yeah, absolutely.
I did like the helicopter scene at the beginning when they're dropping the seismic bombs, and just the shots. I talked about the visual shots of that, and it's all set to Paranoid by Black Sabbath, and I love that song, and it's just great. That was really cool. Goodness. And then... yeah, I think that's about it, other than just like casting things. I mentioned Dat Fan in the thing. So the only one is the motion capture for Kong was provided by two different people.
Yes, it was.
Terry Notary, which we talked about in The Monster a few episodes ago because he did the one on that. And then also Toby Kebbell, who played Chapman, also did the motion capture for Kong, which is really interesting.
Yes, I loved that. I read that too, and I thought, wow. I was glad... when I did my first, like, little bit of research, because I don't read the synopsis, but I do a little research and saw that Terry Notary was involved, I was pretty excited because I just think he does such a great job.
And then the actor who plays young Marlowe at the beginning also plays his son at the end of the movie whenever they reunite.
Really?
So, yeah.
That is cool.
They just gave him a little different facial hair and stuff to where he doesn't look exactly like he did before. But
wow. That's really neat that they did it that way. I'm glad that they gave us the homecoming for him, because I feel like after the stress and strain of the movie, it was our reward to get to see him with his family, because he was just so happy. He had to acclimate to a whole new world.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty incredible to think about that. I can't imagine what it would be like to disappear for that long and come back to the world and have everything have changed so much around you.
Oh, yeah.
And, wow. It's a lot.
So, yeah. Do you have any other notes about characters?
No, I think that you have covered, or we have covered, everything I had about characters.
Cool.
About human characters.
Yes.
Anyway.
Because then we have to get to the star of the show. The
star.
Titular character, Kong.
100 feet tall, amazing Kong.
Although I did see in an interview with Samuel L. Jackson was saying that he kept asking how big Kong was for reference while they were filming, and he kept getting conflicting answers every time.
They had no idea how tall he was because no one would give him a straight answer.
Yep.
Love that. I thought that was kind of a riot.
Yeah. Enter Kong, big old monkey. 8. But
a baby. He's a baby. Oh my goodness. He's going to be all grown up when we see him next.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited for that movie. I know we've got another movie to cover between now and then, but still, it'd be great. I'm so excited.
I know. I didn't expect to be so excited, but when I watched that trailer, it was like, oh my goodness. And I hadn't even seen this yet.
Yeah.
I'm like, of course I'm in, Godzilla has to win. Of course it's got to be Godzilla. And now I'm like, oh no. What's going to happen? Oh my goodness. It's going to be great. Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting to cover that. And they have set the date. I think it's the first week of April.
Oh man.
It's going to be out. A new movie, Pake. A new movie.
Been a little bit.
I think the last new one we covered was Greenland. And Love and Monsters. We just haven't been able to cover. There just hasn't been anything out.
Yep.
So I'm excited. I love covering the new stuff.
Yeah, but they had some really great Kong shots. To get back to that,
yeah,
I think just him destroying all the helicopters is kind of sad as it is when you think about all those men. But just from a destruction standpoint, like, oh, it was great. He's just punching them out of the air and slinging them and ripping them apart and stomping on people and on helicopters and just
banging them together.
Just full on Rampage mode.
It made me think of Rampage. I'm like, oh my goodness. It was really destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And too, when he's eating the squid, that whole thing with the squid. And I read that the director wanted Kong to be kind of like godlike in front, like wanted the audience to see him as kind of godlike and be iconic. So they kind of threw it back to a few of the older films.
Yeah.
Design wise and wanting to pay homage to those, but also make it more contemporary and more new to the world. And I think that they achieved that.
Yeah.
And
love that scene you pointed out. Because I even have my notes that Chapman gets to watch as Kong washes his wounds and stops for a little calamari snack.
Yes. Oh my God. Oh, that squid. But again, the effects were good. Like the effects were really good in this. Now, 10 years from now, we might not say that. But for now, it was pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah. It did make me hungry, though. I wanted some squid, some calamari at that point. It's good.
I know. I love calamari. Love calamari.
Speaking of Kong eating stuff, even though it's not actually like really what happens, but I love the little joke visual of the guy falling out of the helicopter towards Kong's open mouth, and then it just hard cuts to Steve taking a bite out of his sandwich.
I'm like, okay. Because that scene took me back to Rampage when they're on the rooftop and is it Claire is falling and goes into his mouth?
Yeah.
Oh, it took me back to that. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to see it again. And then nope, it was gone as quick as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. We already talked about the God of War reference with the ship propeller and Kong swinging it around. Oh my God. We already talked about that. Yeah, I think they did such a great job with Kong. And I get, based on some of the stuff I've read, that some of the scenes that they filmed and some of the work that they had to do graphically were really intense and complicated because of his hair. Like his fur, it had to be a certain way in order to make it look realistic, and the constant moving and the fighting and everything that went on was really complicated to be able to pull that off. But I think they did a great job with it.
Oh yeah. I can't think of any like CGI moments that I thought were bad.
Yeah.
I think it all flowed really well.
Yeah.
There's nothing that like took me out of it or caught me like off guard and were like, oh, that doesn't look right. I didn't have any of those moments. There was one thing that Terry Notary said about playing Kong. One of the things that he focused on when he was doing it is he was trying to play like he was a 14-year-old trapped in the life of an adult when he was playing Kong. If you think about it, it makes sense because we're looking at a young Kong and he's not going to be perfect. He's still like adolescent.
Yeah. Teenager.
But he's the sole protector left. Yeah, so it makes sense.
He stepped up. He knows that he's the only one that can protect people. So he fights to stay alive. Kong was great. I have to say, even though I was skeptical, this movie exceeded my expectations in many ways.
Good. I'm glad. All right. Well, I can go into notes about the skull crawlers, or at least the main.
Is great.
We talked about the other ones, but at least the main skull crawler, Remarek, as you call him.
Remarek, I guess.
I don't know.
Ramarek just sounds wrong, so it's like maybe Remarek. You know that Mark's going to listen to this. Hi, Mark, and you're going to correct us on how to pronounce it anyway. So I look forward to that because I have no idea. We're just doing our best.
Yep. Yeah, so it has a little bit of like notes about Kong too, but mainly it's just the notes that I have are that final confrontation, that final battle between the two of them. And it's just, it's so cool. And then, but you get to that moment where it looks like Kong has lost. He's tangled in the chains and the Skullcrawler's about to just take him out. And then Brooks shows up and starts firing at him with the float, as they call it, with the turrets there.
Float.
And
I like float.
I loved that. But then it set up a moment. It was like, it's like I mentioned way earlier that, Brie Larson's character, that like Weaver actually kind of helps out in her own way. It's kind of a team effort here that gets Kong where he needs to go, because we get Weaver firing that flare. She fires the first one that helps Brooks find where they are, but then she takes another one, and it looks like she manages to catch the Skullcrawler right in the eye. Which,
oh my gosh! Yeah.
Lucky shot.
Yeah, absolutely. She's multi-talented. That one.
Yeah,
she can do a lot of good.
And that gives Kong the opportunity there to kind of beat it and start strangling it with this propeller on a chain, which is so cool.
Yeah.
But then Kong picks up the Skullcrawler and throws it up into that rock wall that Weaver was standing on top of, which knocks her down into the water. But he's able to scoop her out and save her. Like I said, he's attacked again. And the Skullcrawler swallows the arm that he's holding Weaver in, and still he manages to pull out all the tongue and full guts and everything, all while somehow not managing to not crush Weaver. So that's great.
I can't even I don't know how that happened, but I did do some research on the Skullcrawlers a little bit, and we see that they walk on their forelimbs. They're actually very much like a theropod dinosaur, like a T-Rex velociraptor walking on their back legs, which I thought was cool. But they only have the 2 legs. They don't, I didn't see anything else. So it's kind of interesting how they get around. But they're really creepy. Their faces, and they're always regurgitating things. It's just, so creepy. So creepy.
But yeah, that's I think all the notes really I have about that.
Well, I have a couple things. The roar that they used for the Skullcrawler was inspired by the pain squeal of a dying rabbit. So sad.
All right.
As well as the sounds of sea lions and squirrels. Okay, I get that, I guess. They also, Hank gives them the name the Skullcrawlers, which we've talked about a little bit, but he keeps talking about the big one that's underground. And he said at one point, Kong is god of the island, but the devils live below us. And that was a reference to the Skullcrawlers, especially Romeric, which is the big bad one. And he points it out back when, everyone's still alive, pretty much. Before Packard dies, he actually points it and said, that's the big one.
He
always is talking about the big one. And then when it appears, he's actually, he says to Packard, that's the big one. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Packard knew really what the big one meant. But I know the others did.
Oh, yeah. They're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, they knew what was going on. So, yeah, I feel like the Skullcrawlers were definitely a Muto, for sure. But they were also...
So that was massive, unidentified terrestrial object?
Organism. Is it organism?
Yeah, not really object. Organism makes more sense.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling that off the top of my head. I don't remember. Which I guess, that fits. Except they're not really unidentified as far as they're Skullcrawlers. Marlo knows what they are.
Marlo identified them, so they're no longer a Muto. But they were a Muto for, 10 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
If that long. There were also, some other cool creatures that we got to meet. We talked about the leaf wings a bit. They're the ones that kill Neves. They have the bright blue blood. It's the one that Packard killed and said they were not.
It's one ugly ass bird.
There was what they call the mother long-legged spider, which was that big spider that was walking above and killed a few people and almost killed Mills, like it was pulling Mills up to eat him.
That was a brutal death when the one guy is looking up and then it just gets a leg through the body, mouth and down.
Not pretty at all.
But I guess the legs were made out of bamboo. It looked like when they were chopping the legs, they literally were filming them just chopping bamboo. And
yes. I'm glad they figured out to do that, because I was thinking, how are they going to save him? He's too important to die now.
Mm-hmm. Cut it off at the legs.
And they just go after it.
It was creepy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Watching that, I just realized, okay, there's some creatures on this island that, it's more than Kong. There's some other supersized beings that you should be scared of. One you should not be scared of, though, are the sker buffalo, which we saw a couple of them. They look like the big yak. One was in the water, and the other one, Weaver went out to try to save when the piece of the plane fell on it. I think they were the same type of creature.
Yeah.
They kind of resemble like a yak with these big moose-like antlers, which I really liked them. That's what took me back to Love and Monsters. Yeah. Was that one when it came out of the water. There was also the stick insect, or what was called the spore mantis, which is the one that Chapman encounters. It looks like a stick bug, really. Yeah. Like, it didn't want to hurt anybody. It was like, again, it's in the eyes.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it might have attacked Chapman after Chapman was shooting at it.
Yes.
But the reason it turned around and left is because there's a skull crawler right there anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, all right, he'll deal with you. I'm leaving.
A lot of the creatures on the island seem to be able to camouflage themselves, which was interesting.
The skull crawlers are like I guess dominant predator of the island.
Oh,
you kind of have to be able to camouflage yourself and hide from those.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't all go underneath like that squid was hiding underneath the water. Not everyone can hide there. There were also, too, the ants that we never see. The ones that Marlo was talking about that were an afterthought or a little, outtake. Or it's kind of cool that they did that. I like that. You never know. Sometimes lines are improvised. There's a great line in Jaws that was. So that's all I have on those notes.
Cool. Same here. I think we've about covered it then. Awesome.
Yeah. It's a good movie. I'm pretty excited about it still.
All right. Well then, why don't you hit us up with some production notes and fun tidbits that you like to pull for after the discussion.
Fun tidbit, Joe Cornish, who directed one of my favorites, Attack the Block, which we've covered here, was offered the chance to direct the film, but he turned it down. I'm kind of curious what he would have brought to the table, but yeah, I feel like he loves doing his lower budget movies more than like a big blockbuster like this. However, the director of this film, Jordan Vogt-Roberts, has only directed 3 films. Skull Island is number 3 of the films he's directed. Or he is scheduled to direct the film adaptation of the video game Metal Gear Solid. And he also co-wrote the story. I'm interested. I've seen the game. Yeah. It's pretty good.
Video game movies.
But I always get nervous.
Yeah.
Makes me nervous. I don't know. But he is the director. He is a huge fan of video games and like anime and manga. So I think it could be okay. But I guess time will tell. We'll see. I don't think it's going to have creatures. I don't think it's one that we're going to probably cover here. But maybe one of our friends will. So, Henry Jackman composed the score. It was important to him to give it a 70s feel, which totally achieved. Yeah. He did music for Captain America the Winter Soldier and Civil War, both of the Kick-Ass films, and a host of other movies, including Wreck-It Ralph, anything from like Wreck-It Ralph to Captain Phillips. So it's like all over the place.
He's been all over the place, yeah.
Yeah. I think he likes to do movies that he can kind of get into and really help add to the story, because in looking at the list of films that he's worked on, it to me, it just seems like these are films that have a story to tell, a real definite story to tell, and he just wants to enhance it. So I think he was the right choice for this one. Originally, the movie was 3+ hours long, but they cut it down to under 2 hours, and some of the things that did not make it into the final cut can be found in the novelization of the movie, including Conrad meeting a giant snake and an extended fight between Marlo and Akari, which would have been cool. Although I feel like any more with the knife, with the sword and the hands, and no. Pain. The director was inspired by Apocalypse Now, Platoon, The Conversation, and Bong Joon-ho's The Host, which I think you can see a lot of those influences on this movie.
Mm-hmm.
One of the coolest things, though, and I'm going to end with this, is the soundtrack really was full of these late 60s, early 70s music, including like Bad Mood Rising, Time Has Come Today, White Rabbit, Ziggy Stardust, and you mentioned earlier Paranoid by Black Sabbath. I feel like the soundtrack was pretty great, and I may have to listen to it soon.
It's good stuff.
That is pretty much all I have for production notes. I feel like there's a lot this time.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into this movie, and I'm glad they did. All right. Now comes a really fun part where we get to relive some great moments through quotes. So I always let you go first.
Yes.
That's just what I do.
Always. So I really only have one because we used a bunch of my quotes I used throughout when we were talking about it. So I feel like I've really only got one left. And it was basically when Randa was talking to Conrad, trying to convince him to come on this journey, escapade, adventure, whatever it was. And he said to him, "Men go to war in search of something, Mr. Conrad. If you'd found it, you'd be home by now." So
I like that line a lot.
Me too, because I feel like he was really appealing to his sense of adventure and finding that one thing that like fulfills him, makes him feel complete. And I think that really kind of helped flip the switch for Conrad and got him to take the mission, because he wanted to, obviously he's looking for something he hasn't found. Okay, let's go see. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe Kong is something he was looking for. I'm not really sure, but... And then the other quote I had, we've already used, which is, "I've only been here 28 years. What do I know?" And that was basically Marlowe. After Packard won't listen to him and plans to head through the boneyard. Like, he's telling him all these things. And he won't listen. He basically has a guide. And he won't listen to the guide. Like, an island guide is standing in front of him. He won't listen. Yeah. It's like, he knows better. It's like, no, you don't. So what did you have?
All right. I had quite a little handful of them. See, and you can always tell, again, there's like a point where you get to like halfway to like 3/4 of the way through the movie, and then the action is ramped up so much that I stopped doing quotes because it's just so. But see, so in order as the movie goes through, the first one I have is Senator Willis talking to Randa and Brooks and saying, "In terms of sheer waste, Monarch ranks right up there with the search for alien life." Which Randa responds, "Yeah, but those guys are nuts." I love that one. We mentioned this as Packard saying, "Hold on to your butts," which is it's a great self-reference from Samuel L. Jackson to himself in Jurassic Park.
Yes.
And I love that. We have Mills and Cole talking. Cole sits down and he's eating. And he's like, "Why are you eating at a time like this?" And he says, "Eating's for the living." But then the line that I have on here is like, "We just got taken down by a monkey the size of a building." And the only thing Cole responds to is very nonchalantly, he goes, "Yeah, that was an unconventional encounter." Like, he's just very unfazed by everything.
It's true. I liked Cole and Mills' relationship. Uh-huh. They were just so close. So close. Like, I feel like it was kind of like a father-son type relationship. Or, more than brothers. I feel like they, Cole was looking out for Mills. They were kind of like this tag team, and they flew the helicopter together, and they had a really good relationship, and I was sad.
Great. I have another line from Packard, which is just a quick line that really shows that he's going to make this his personal mission to avenge his men towards Kong. When he's talking to Randa, and Randa's something like, "Let's get out of here and then we can send back the cavalry." And he just responds with, "I am the cavalry."
Yep.
Which,
yes.
And then my last two come from our good friend Hank Marlowe.
Yes.
Which
MVP Hank Marlowe.
I just love the reference, the self-referentialness, the meta-ness of what movie we're watching, and the history and the series and stuff, that the universe that it's in, where when he's explaining Kong and everything to him, he's like, "Well, that's Kong. He's king around here," which is great. Just King Kong. That's what it is.
Oh, I love it.
And then I love when the group decides, well, really Packard decides for everybody, that they're going to go to Chapman's crash site. and there's nothing anybody can say that's going to change their mind. That's what they're doing. And then Marlowe has this kind of little moment where he kind of breaks down, but he's still keeping himself. And he goes, it's a good group of boys. We're all going to die together out here. But you're a good group of boys to die with. I'll tell you that much. You shouldn't have come here.
Oh, classic
Yeah.
Marlowe.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good.
But just the way he's laughing through the whole thing. You shouldn't have come here. I
How can you help
Love
but
it.
not laugh? Because it's
I know.
it's the way it is. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Great.
So good. Like I said earlier, I think that the Hank Marlowe quotes in this movie were just, it's what we needed to help us get through all the dreariness at times.
Yeah. So that leaves us to one of the last things we have to talk about this movie with, and that is our rankings. Where do we land? What do we think? And you do have to go first this time because you haven't seen this one before now. So,
Oh, is that what you think? Okay.
you did that to me last week with the whatever week we did with the faculty. I think it was the last one.
Yes. I did that with the faculty. I got away with it. I can understand I won't get away with it this time. But I reserve the right to push back and make you go first in a future episode. So, at the end of the day, the effects in this movie blew me away. I loved it. I liked the characters so much more than I thought I would. I enjoyed the story so much more than I did Godzilla. Even though there were great points to Godzilla, there were just things about this movie that resonated with me. There were just metaphors throughout that we really didn't talk about. However, at the end of the day, I gave it an 8.4.
Ooh, that's pretty good. Yeah, this is higher scoring than I even thought it would be before I came into this. But rewatching it and then talking about it, it just keeps like pounding into my head, like how much I love this movie. It's just so much fun. And so it's getting a pretty high score. I am giving it an 8.7.
Oh my goodness.
Up there.
That's high for you.
Yeah.
That is really high for you. Oh my goodness. All right.
Yeah. It's an early contender for our top, countdown lists at the end of this, like season 2 or whatever. So
I know. I was thinking about that already.
Like there's some stuff.
So I feel like we covered so much of Kong, and I think the rankings really, I know we always say that they don't matter. Yeah. But I feel like the score was definitely deserved in this case, and I stand behind my 8.4.
Cool. Good. I like it. All right, it's time to get to some feedback for this week. I'm always excited to hear what people have to say about the movies we cover. And this first one here, we get to hear back from our friend Tony. Again, always good to hear from her. And Daphne, why don't you go ahead and read that for me if you don't mind?
I don't mind at all. It's great to hear from Tony as always. This is what she had to say. Great monster movie. King Kong is my favorite. I was born in 1971, and King Kong with Jessica Lange and Jeff Bridges was my first monster movie. I cried when he falls off of the Twin Towers and dies. Then came the remake with Jack Black and the same ending, just bald. My husband and daughter tease me to this day because I can only watch up to the capture of Kong. I really appreciated Skull Island for being something completely different. Great action / monster flick with great music. John C. Reilly's character is silly, but I love him, so forgiven. Thumbs up.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I haven't seen the 71 version, but I've seen the Jack Black one, and it's a little long, but it's good. I enjoy it. But yeah, Skull Island is its own creature, and I really like how they twisted it and did something really fun and new with it.
Yeah, me too.
And then we have one voicemail from, who is it?
His name is Steve Brown.
Always good to get a call from Steve. Let's see what he said.
It is. So, without further ado, here's Steve.
Hey, Pake and Daphne, it's Steve, and this is, I just started Kong Skull Island. Well, that's pretty cool. John C. Reilly got the "and" credit. That was the last, like, the "and" and then John C. Reilly. That's definitely a man worth talking to. Whoa. You know, I've seen this before, but all these guys talking about how one day away and all their expectations. I should have known the first time I watched it that, yeah, a lot of these guys are not going to make it. I love taking photographs. That scene there, that little montage with her taking the pictures on the deck of the ship. I love that. I used to love doing that. People nowadays just don't like their picture being taken. He said, hold on to your butts, just like Jurassic Park. I'm sure their helicopter training never gave them any information about dodging trees or big, gigantic gorilla hands. Okay, I didn't get a chance to finish the movie last night because I was just way too tired. But from my memory, you know, I think one of the coolest scenes had to be when Hiddleston gets the sword and he's cutting down the flying guys that are attacking them, the flying whatever animals those were. And I just love that they get to show us John C. Reilly reconciling and the reunion with his family. That was really, really great. And I teared up the first time I watched it. And I think I teared up the second time I watched it also. All right. I'm going to send this to you guys. I can't wait to hear you guys talk about it.
Thanks, Steve.
Awesome. Thanks. Always love going on an adventure and journey with you through a movie, even if you didn't finish it, but you remembered enough. You remembered the most important part. We talked about that earlier too. It's like, I think that's the coolest part of the movie for me that like I immediately think of when I think Skull Island.
Absolutely.
And if anybody wants to submit any feedback like we got from Tony and Steve this week, and we always appreciate hearing from you guys, anyone who wants to send it in, you can do that a couple of different ways. You can go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter at RFYL Podcast and Instagram at runforyourlivespodcast. If you're enjoying the show, please tell your friends, share the love. You can send them just to our website, runforyourlivespodcast.com, and that will have links to all of our social media or our podcast player links like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Audible, YouTube, Stitcher, everywhere. We are everywhere. Go to Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars, give us a nice, loving review. Always makes us feel happy.
You know what? We've had a couple of reviews. Wendy and Tony left us reviews on Apple Podcasts. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Some other things going around in our little podcast universe right now. I've been shouting out. So make sure you go check those out if you want some more TV and movie goodness. You can always check out Panels to Pixels, where you can hear Steve and our friend Mark. And they have their 2 shows that they're doing right now. So Mark has been covering WandaVision, and the latest one that is out, of course, is episode 8, because episode 9 just aired last night. So, or today for most people. Last night for me. Today, most people watched it. So, but if you want to go back and listen to their coverage of episode 8, and then episode 9 when it comes out later this week, you can check that out. Him and Damien covered episode 8, our good friend Damien. And then Steve is over on the other side doing Snowpiercer with somebody who's kind of cool, has been covering that with him. Who's been doing that with Steve?
That would be me.
Nice.
I'm having fun. I'm having a lot of fun with Steve talking about Snowpiercer. It's a great show that not enough people are watching, so you guys should definitely check it out.
Yes. And then we mentioned Mark earlier, Mark's other podcast, Adrenaline Cinema, covering action movies. Next episode of that will be him and our friend Wendy discussing Red Dawn.
Oh, it's a great movie.
And then Walking Dead Cast on Podcastica, our good friends there. Walking Dead Cast is back, and they are covering the remainder of season 10. That is right. For those of you who are not aware, that Walking Dead is back for a quick little 6-episode, like mini season in the end of season 10. It's kind of a weird thing, but the first episode 17 of the season technically, was so good. I had a great time with it. And then the next one comes out this weekend, so they'll be covering that over this week. Check it out. If you're a Walking Dead fan, Walking Dead Cast is the place to listen to it and nerd out about that. Jason and Lucy have been breaking that down really good. And then speaking of Podcastica, another podcast over there in that network is House Podcast. Yeah, that's been covering a bunch of really cool stuff. And they have a great show coming up they're covering with some really cool guests. Daphne, why don't you tell them about that?
So, Jason and my friend Wendy and I are going to be covering season 4 of The Handmaid's Tale. So I'm really excited to get a chance to work with Jason and Wendy on this. And I haven't seen the show, so I'm starting to watch it now. I've made it almost through season 1. I have a little more time, but I'm really excited to get the opportunity to be on House Podcastica with Jason and Wendy and break down this great show.
So season 4 starts in April, I believe. And then they will be doing, or I say they, since I'm speaking to the listeners, but you, Daphne, you, Jason, and Wendy will be doing a recap episode of the first 3 seasons before it starts also. So people need a little catching up and stuff like that as well.
Yes, we will. I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be really fresh in my head, having watched it now. And I'm not binging. I'm watching like 1 or 2 episodes a day. So I should get through it by the end of the month and be ready to do the recap show.
Nice. Yeah. That is a show that is not easy to binge. That's a rough one sometimes. So
yeah. I learned that in episode 1. And so I'm taking it slow because I'm trying to really pay attention to the little details, kind of like we do when we're breaking down movies on this podcast. Yeah. We're always looking at the little things that are happening and wanting to dive in and bring that to our listeners' attention.
Awesome. And speaking of breaking down movies on this podcast, why don't you tell everybody what we will be breaking down next week?
So next week, we're going to be parasailing into Isla Sorna as we dig into the 2001 science fiction action film, Jurassic Park 3. Ugh, you know how I am with dinosaurs. So excited to break this one down. It's a lot of fun. It was directed by Joe Johnston. It's the 3rd and final film in the Jurassic Park trilogy. Dr. Alan Grant comes face to face with his past nightmares while helping a family search for their missing son on the abandoned Site B, where dinosaurs have grown and thrived outside of the paddocks and engines monitoring. Raptors, pteranodons, and a Spinosaurus running amok. What could be better?
Oh, man, it's... what spurred this on was us doing our recap episode, and we had so much to just like gush about with Jurassic Park still. So I was like, yep, now that we're like starting like this new quote unquote season, whatever we're calling it, like we got to jump back into Jurassic Park. Quick.
Yeah. Which I'm always down for. So I am so stoked that we covered this movie and can't wait to release it to all of you to listen to next week.
Yes. All right. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
And with that, we've reached the end of our episode.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for listening, for your feedback, support, Apple reviews, everything. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
We love doing this for you guys and look forward to doing more. I am Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run from skull crawlers, leaf wings, or ants that sound like birds, you'd better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.